Good morning, everyone. Today is Wednesday, November 16th. I am Jordan Smith, and I am the astrologer and voice behind Nonconformist Conscience. So, let's talk about this week. I want to, tell all of you guys that I hope that this eclipse season went well for you. There was a lot that went down, especially for people who were born, around the years of the ending of 88 and the year of 1989. This eclipse was most likely happening very close to your Pluto. And that can be a lot. That can be really wanting to close some karmic chapters and to open new ones and evolve past the old through transmuting the experiences of the old and now, composting them. It's very scorpionic, very Plutonian, transmuting them in such a way that now it can provide, some groundwork for more evolution and growth to occur. So if you are someone who really felt these eclipses, I just want to say I'm so proud of you. Because it can be a lot. It's definitely some soul growth. Anything happening on someone's Pluto, or anytime we get transits that are Pluto on our planets, those can be really intense. And what I like to tell people is, on a soul level, you have chosen to experience those dynamics that come up whenever these specific transits happen as a way to really grow and strengthen the soul. And oftentimes there is resistance. It's Pluto, it's scorpionic. So learning how to not resist and how to go with the flow and to jump into, the water of Scorpio and really have a big dive into the emotional body can be really, really, really intense for people. It feels like a vortex, getting sucked into something. And so if you are one of these people, I want to say good job. Keep going. So let's talk more about this week, since this is the first week past these eclipses. I wrote a written report. It's on the website. I also posted on the Facebook page and the Instagram of Nonconformist Conscience some slides or pictures where I go over Venus and Sag. And today I really want to talk about Venus and Sag and go a little bit more into this transit. And then I want to talk a little bit about Vesta, which is an asteroid who on Monday will be entering the sign of Pisces. I feel like both of these transits are beneficial to each other. And that means that if we're consciously working with the energetics of these transits, that it can be really beneficial for you. So today, Venus went into Sagittarius. And tomorrow, Mercury will enter Sagittarius. And in a few days' time, they will meet up in perfection in an aspect or a conversation called a conjunction. And that is where these two planets look like they are sitting on top of each other. So let us jump into this archetype. First, I'm going to start with Venus, and then I will pull in Sag, and then we'll synthesize this together. And then we'll do the same thing with Vesta. So let's break this down. Anytime we have a transit with Venus, whenever Venus is changing signs, that is showing us where we are learning or growing about our Venusian dynamics. And so what are Venusian dynamics? Venusian dynamics are our relational dynamics. They are on one end, the dynamics that we have with people in relationship to them. But another big part about Venus is our relationship with ourselves. And Venus it teaches us about what our needs are. And from there, we are able to listen to ourselves. Am I able to listen to myself and what I need? That is the inner expression of Venus. There's also the outer expression of Venus, which is, am I able to listen to other people that I'm in relationship with from where they're really coming from, instead of me projecting what I think they need or want or what my needs are onto them. So there's this function of really being able to listen, and listen in a way that is beneficial. Venus not only is about our personal needs, Venus is about, from those needs, we understand what our values are. And when we understand what our values are, we then are able to know what gives meaning to us in life. Venus is also about our natural resources, the gifts that we carry within, our own resources, the things that help us survive, because Venus is also a function of survival. In order to survive, you have to know what you need, and you have to know what you value and what gives you meaning. So these are some really Venusian, dynamics. I have been talking about this for months as Venus has been transiting and going into each one of the signs. And so if you are someone who watches these videos, you have heard me talk about how the astrology builds upon itself. If you are consciously working with astrology, then you are going to be really making a conscious effort to see where a transiting Venus is reflecting in your life and how it's showing up for you. So, excuse me. Venus and Sag. Well, Sag is about our beliefs. Sag is about higher learning. It is about where we have our philosophies. It's about expansion upon what we know. And what we have experienced, where what we've known and experienced or learned to actually know and experience happens in the sign of Scorpio. That's why there's this huge psychological analyzing, a preponderance of it to get to the bottom of what power is, what it isn't, and how things cannot be in your control sometimes. It can be really heavy. And so Venus now today going into the sign of Sag lightens things up. So if you've been following these transits with me, we know that we have been really working on our relational dynamics. So when we know what we need, and then from that we know what we value, and then from that we know what we give meaning to, when Venus hits Sag, from what we give meaning from or to, we now understand what our beliefs are. So when Venus is transiting Sag, we are learning about what our beliefs are. And because Venus is really about our interrelationship with self, we are really paying attention to how we talk to ourselves. What do I believe about myself? How am I talking to myself? If I'm listening to what I'm saying or what's coming up for me, what does that sound like? Is it negative? If so, where does this negative belief about myself come from? And so all of us are in this deep process of a liberation. Uranus is in Taurus, which really amps up the energy and packs a punch into these Venusian dynamics of our inner relationship with self. And really, the Uranian quality is to liberate from old values that have been conditioned by the status quo. So I want us all to really pay attention to the ways in which we speak to ourselves and the way in which we project our beliefs onto others. This is what this whole Venus transit Sag is. And it lightens things up. Here's the trick is Venus in Sag brings laughter and buoyancy, where you're starting to connect dots and you're like, oh my God, like I see how I'm talking crap to myself. And oh, well, I've been working on this. And it stems from, being conditioned to feel guilty for asking for what I need or for meeting my own needs or taking time for myself. The more and more that you become aware of this and how it has structured our belief system on a personal level, I find that you can actually laugh about it because it will appear in your life. Like all you have to do is consciously look for it, and then you just kind of get to laugh about the absurdity of it. And that helps lighten things so that way you can do this inner work, right? Venus in Sag is beautiful. Here she gets us to expand upon what we've known and what we have philosophized about. This is why people, whenever they have Venus in Sag or there's a major transit happening that's hitting things in their chart and it has to deal with a transiting Venus in the sign of Sag, they will meet people from other cultures, or they'll want to travel and then they meet people from other cultures. It's because through this traveling and different cultures, we get to expand upon our beliefs. And what we truly learn at the core is that the truth is relative, right? Like what may be true for me might not be for someone else. That is why you will hear me. I know you guys have heard me say there is more than one way to get to Denny's. This is like what part of that symbolizes is that what may be true for one person isn't for the other. And so a lot of us right now are going to be wanting to really, postulate on what our beliefs are, and we want to expand our consciousness through, you know, um, reading, writing, gaining information. That way we can learn more about the natural law of the truth is relative, or the relativity of truth. And that gets me to this other place of Sag. Sag is about natural and universal law. So it's these things that are inherently right or wrong, right? And it's not subjective. It is something that is a truth. It's how we all know that if a baby is left in the street, we're not going to just sit there and watch what happens. We know that that's wrong, right? There are these things in our life that we inherently know, even as children, that they're wrong. It's when we become conditioned, then we see things like racism, where that's a social construct, right? And so that will shape people's beliefs. So a lot of people right now, especially we can see this in the collective, are really, and we're going to see this even more because this is the transit that's happening, Venus and Sag. We are going to see more people who are expanding upon their beliefs or understanding that the truth is relative. And what this does is through evolution and understanding these, we get to learn about the timeless nature of what truth really is through natural law. So a great way to work with a transiting Venus in the sign of Sag is really connecting with nature, breathing with the wind, taking a journal when you're outside and writing down whatever comes to you, even if it doesn't make sense. Venus and Sag is really asking us to, there's this emphasis on the right brain. So it's the intuition. It's not linear and it's not the logic. It is from all that I've learned and expanded upon. Now I can have a knowing about something. I know what I know without knowing. Anyone with a strong Sag or Venus and Sag, when they hear the truth, they're going to know what the truth is. When they hear a lie, they're going to know that it's a lie. So there's also this other component to Venus being in the sign of Sag, which is about authenticity and honesty. On the flip side, if this is not naturally expressed, we can be dealing with, compensation and dishonesty. And so this is a time to really get in touch with these inner workings and with the right mind, the intuitive side, and connecting with nature, and really postulating on where our beliefs come from. Where do they stem from? Is it from the status quo? Is it from indoctrination? Is this in alignment with natural law? It's really, there's this deep wanting for all of us to connect back with natural law and to really have this liberation process from the status quo of more patriarchal distortions. So when we don't really know what our needs, our values, what gives us meaning, or aren't in touch with our beliefs stemming from them, it can be really hard to live in an authentic place. And therefore, we will see compensation, which is a form of dishonesty. If you're not being authentic, then it's dishonest, right? So compensation can really, I can give a story, it's a personal one, to better, explain this. So I grew up in a family that was extremely religious and very patriarchal. And growing up, I also have Venus and Sag, full disclosure, and Jupiter on my ascendant. So growing up, I inherently knew that some of the things that I was being taught were absolutely wrong. Like, I can remember being like 5 and like crying and like telling my parents that they were wrong. And they were definitely things that stem from patriarchal conditioning. And I have compassion for my family because I understand that that's how they've been conditioned. But I chose that because there have been lifetimes of mine where I have been compensating, and I would do this later on, through alcohol. That was, the only way I could feel like I could be around my friends at the time. Was there was this compensation I was having because I wasn't being authentic. I felt really weird and very different than the people around me, which all of us have experienced this at some point. It is a universal experience. But this was really, really strong. When I was little, I was a kid who like played out in nature. I didn't really have a lot of friends because I couldn't really, I communicated better with animals in nature than I did people. The things that my peer group were discussing or emotionally dealing with was very different than how I felt. And it was a very sad kind of experience that I had. But because I have a lot of trauma stemming from family and from previous lifetimes, I decided to compensate at some point, to really convince myself that I was like everyone else, whenever on the inside I truly knew that I wasn't. So how I compensated is it's like what kids do to want to fit in with the in crowd. That's a pretty universal experience. That's a conditioned thing if we're really looking at it. But I, started to, oh, you're into this? Okay. Then I started to like, I'll be into that then. Even though it was something I had no interest in, it was a way I was compensating for survival pretty much, as a way to not feel ostracized or alienated from my peer group or from my family of origin. Now, what happened for me, because I do have a lot of this Sag in my chart and a propensity of 8th house dynamics and Scorpio stuff, is on a soul level, this was the lifetime that I said no more. So I picked a family that I knew I was very different from, who had very different beliefs, where I felt a lot of indignation being around them because of the injustice and the hypocrisy. These are all very patriarchal things, by the way, that was occurring, that whenever I became an adult, I decided to really liberate myself from that and decided to live in my authenticity. I'm an astrologer and I'm sitting here talking to you guys on YouTube, and I live in Oklahoma. Like, that's crazy. And it's because I decided I wasn't going to compensate anymore. I was going to live in and be authentic to who I was, because it was eating away at me on a soul level that I knew that I was being dishonest. And whenever I kind of came out of the closet, so to speak, now I have friends that I actually can have meaningful relationships with, where we can talk about these things that we have interest in. And, you know, there's acceptance and there's inclusivity and there's equality. Everything's equanimous. So that's kind of part of my Sag journey. And so I wanted to point that out, that compensation can be a really big thing. A lot of times as well, whenever I was younger, if you see, like, my chart has Jupiter, which is the natural ruler of Sag. I have Jupiter on my ascendant. So a lot of times I would compensate by appearing really, what is the word I'm looking for? Really self-confident. And after everything that I'm telling you, we know that I was not actually self-confident. I was compensating as a way to survive. And so that can look different for different people, but there is a need for all of us with this transit to really look at, where have I been compensating? Am I compensating? Am I being authentic? How do I believe about myself? What do I believe about myself? How does this stem from my values and my needs? And am I able to meet that? Is this where I'm having negative self-talk? You know, and here's the thing, this sounds very, very like dense and very heavy. But I will tell you, with Venus and Sag, things will be lighthearted. It's like connecting dots and having a fun time, like being able to laugh at everything. And that is a great quality about the Sag dynamic, is laughter is really healing. And with this transit, a lot of us that are doing this deep inner work, we're going to really get to laugh as we go through this. It's not going to feel so heavy and intense like it did whenever we were working through the Virgo dynamics, the Libra and Scorpio dynamics, all of the transits we've just been happening. Now we're kind of, once you come out of Scorpio, you hit Sag with a Venus transit, oh boy, sky's the limit. Like, this is where we get to have fun and laugh at the ways in which we were, right? And connect dots. Oh, that's why I believed that. Like, that's ridiculous. And you get to laugh. So I talked about this a little bit. Vesta is going into the sign of Pisces on Monday. And I love Vesta. Vesta is an asteroid. If you really want to learn about history, you can look up what the Vestal Virgins were and the cult of that. It's a real thing in history. I find it really fascinating. But for time's sake, and maybe I'll do a video over Vesta. And I think I want to start doing some videos over some of the asteroids for you guys. But with Vesta, Vesta is where we keep the sacred flame alive. It's where we devote ourselves to something. And it is, you know, symbolizing the devotion we have. And it's really, Vesta without a sign, just on her own, is about where we find our wholeness or our holiness within, and to devote ourselves to keeping that internal flame alive, of understanding that we are whole into ourselves. And this is where sovereignty comes into play. Sovereignty is a huge thing with the asteroid Vesta. So Vesta in the sign of Pisces is really about devoting oneself to discerning the ways in which we go about keeping the flame alive for our devotion to a spiritual practice, and learning that there are things and experiences from natural and universal law that are very timeless. It's Pisces. They are timeless in nature. And so here with Vesta, you know, traveling through the sign of Pisces with Venus and Sag, we are really at a place where we can really experience the beauty of creator, creatress. There's a square going on between Venus and Vesta right now, and really this can be a conversation of tension, but the signs that these are in, and it being Venus, it really speaks to more of a call to act. What do you believe in? Is it timeless in nature, or is it conditioned? How are your prior beliefs about yourself, about reality? How have they conditioned your spiritual devotion? How have they conditioned you to maybe turn away from the wholeness inside of you? Where have you bought into the illusion that you're not sovereign unto your own, you know? And I find this just extremely beautiful and lighthearted for everything and the intensity that a lot of us have been going through, especially us 80s babies. You know, there's been a lot of intensity for us since like I would say 2008. And so here we are with these really beautiful transits that are asking us to continue to devote ourselves to spiritualize, to grow, to evolve, and to search for the truth. And how we do that is by observing reality as it is instead of the potential of what it could be. That is something a lot of us will be learning and growing through as Vesta travels through the sign of Pisces. So a dog's about to come in. He makes an entrance sometimes. But with that being said, I am going to end this week's video. Like I said, you can find me at nonconformistconscience.com, Facebook. You can also find me on Facebook, Jordan Smith. I spell my name with a Y. I live in Oklahoma, if that helps you out. And there is a Instagram page as well. I want all of us to really get fired up about what's going on in the sky, and know that we have so much, you know, divine wisdom, and all we have to do is postulate on the answer that we're needing and really trust oneself when the answer comes to us. Venus and Sag it's learning how to trust in self and trust in the intuition. And with the square to Vesta, it really, really amps that up. There is a need to devote oneself to flexing that intuitive muscle and really cultivating a deeper relationship with self and the intuition and with spirit, and to devote oneself to this cultivation. So I want you all to have a beautiful week, and I will be here next week for the new moon, and I will see you all soon.